Today, I'm talking to a former NFL and Major League Baseball strength coach about what young athletes can do to get their mind and body right. It's coming up right now. Hey everybody, welcome to Elite Athletes TV. I'm Mike Pulaski, former 11-year pro quarterback and quarterbacks coach here at EliteAthletesTV.com. In this day and age of specialization, so many athletes focus on their sport, playing their sport year-round, and only their sport. But it takes more than that to build great athletes. Today, I have a great conversation with the former NFL and Major League Baseball strength coach, coached in college, has been an outstanding trainer for athletes in every sport, and is our strength and conditioning coach, our human performance director here at EliteAthletesTV.com. Before we get started, make sure, if you haven't done it yet, that you subscribe and ring that bell. That way you get notified when we have new stuff coming out. Give us a thumbs up, hit that like button down below, and leave me a comment because I'd love to hear from you. Outside of what you do on the field, court, or track for your sport, there are also things that you have to do to get your body and your mind right, to create symmetry and balance, and to improve your athleticism. Today I'm talking to Ethan Banning, our human performance director, and he's got some inside tips. We started talking a little bit about younger athletes and about kind of age-appropriate stuff for younger athletes. Talk me kind of through an age range, because we've got coaches watching that are high school coaches, youth coaches, kind of older coaches that watch the channel. Talk me about age-appropriate stuff, kind of what coaches should be thinking about.
Well, we've heard for years like wives' tales of lifting weights going to stunt growth, and it doesn't do that. But there's certainly age-appropriate, training that's appropriate. And we want to think of it more than weightlifting. We want to think of it training. And I think that's the term you used, and I probably threw in weightlifting. But, when somebody's early on starting, we want, if they're 10 years old, say, what movement mastery? Do they know how to march? Do they swing their opposite arm and leg correctly when they're marching? Can they do walking lunges? Can they control their body in space? Do they just understand general movements? We're teaching that cross crawl movement pattern so that, we get them prepared to later on get stronger. So when we look at, and really the answer is prepubescent, prepubescent is just movement mastery, movement literacy. Think of it like we're teaching them the ABCs right now so that at some point they can read, and then at some point they can write their own book. But if they don't know the ABCs, it's very difficult to read and then to write. The same thing's true if somebody doesn't know how to march and skip and hop and jump and single leg hop and single leg jump and move laterally efficiently. Well, it becomes very difficult to be a very good athlete. Now, you and I may have learned those things in creative free play. And there's a lot of discussion about creative free play. And creative free play is when, you go out and you were out until the street lights came on, then you came home. And that's just part of the thing. You played whatever game in your neighborhood that you played with the neighborhood kids. And that candidly just doesn't happen that much anymore. And now you've got a cone set up here and a cone there, and there's not this reactive type of athleticism, or if you jumped out of a tree or maybe off of a building, or maybe you were running from something or someone. You learned how to sprint and burst, change directions. But when you jump out of a tree and you land incorrectly, very quickly that stinger that goes from toe to head, you learn, oh, I better bend my knees and get into more of an athletic position. And it happens naturally. Well, those are, concepts that we are teaching. When I was coaching at the NFL level, we were teaching our rookies how to get into and own the athletic position, the landing position to a jump. And I was sort of like, man, why are we having to do this?
Yeah.
Yes.
NFL rookies.
And it's because we've made everything so structured that kids don't figure it out on their own. Like there's some figuring out that you play basketball, you figure out how to jump and land. You play back in the backyard, jumping out of your treehouse or your tree or whatever, you learn how to land. You learn how to move. If you're playing tag, the reaction skills developed of you cut left, I have to chase you to catch you. Then the leadership skills that are developed of we pick teams. Somebody needs to pick the game that we're going to play. Somebody that needs to set the rules that are going to be made. And so we're working on, and so, those things. And I think in training, we have to consider that kids these days aren't getting those development, parts. So in a young athlete, prepubescent training process, making it fun, making it reactive, making it creative are going to be some really critical components to helping their long-term development. Once they've mastered their body weight, once they've been doing those types of skills, for more than just a few weeks, but this is a couple years or a few years where we really can get better at just general physical preparedness, is what we call it in the business, before we have a need to specialize. Because once we get into that,
there's no need at that age to heavily load a kid or to, heavy volume on a kid, because they're not going to put on the muscle until the testosterone kicks in anyway, right? The sex hormones. So
absolutely
learning proper movement patterns, which we did, kind of swimming, jumping, biking, running, hiking, all that stuff that we did, hopscotch. I mean, I just think about the million different games, Ring Around the Rosies, and, we'd spin the little top with everybody on it, running around the outside one direction and switching it off and going back the other direction. Like, symmetry was built into everyday play for us as kids.
Yeah, absolutely. And then we got scared and we protected our children, or we specialized, or club sports became such a huge, candidly, a money thing.
Business,
yeah, it was such a huge business piece that people, were capitalizing on it. And then parents really feel the pressure of, oh man, I've got to specialize or I'll get behind. And I'm just like, look, if your kid's developing athleticism, and I give you another example of developing athleticism. I've got a dear friend that coaches golf at Arizona State women's. And she told me that, like, look, we're not recruiting the best golfers in the country. We're recruiting the best athletes that play golf, because we feel like we can develop better golfers if they're better athletes, and their athletic ceiling is just higher, right? Like, I mean, it's kind of as simple as that. I mean, the people that, you look at pro athletes and they play golf all the time, like you referenced earlier, and it's a way to compete. But I've been around a lot of pro athletes that golfed consistently that were very bad at golf because they're good athletes.
They're good athletes, yeah.
So, I mean, the skills that are going to help, a young athlete learn the ABCs, the alphabet of athleticism, are going to be really critical and really getting great at it. I mean, think about, if we look at the academia study, like, we learn the ABCs before we go to kindergarten most times, but we're still learning about grammar and English all the way through college and even into advanced degrees, and we're still not necessarily experts at that point. Yet we want to put our 7-year-old in the sport specific training for a baseball player. I'm going, maybe a little bit premature, 10 years.
Just a touch, just a touch. So one last question to kind of finish us off, coaches at home, players at home. Obviously we've had a weird year this year. COVID has been insane. And, California just now getting into football season. Other states have been done on a normal schedule. And so off-season training for these coaches, I know that you have set up schedules to get people ready to peak when it comes time for season, when it comes time to play. How should coaches be looking at their training this off-season?
Well, I would expect that kids haven't done as much as they should have. They've got a lot of different options when it comes to being at home. They spend a lot of time in front of the computer. I mean, you get general physical preparedness walking around school carrying a backpack, and that's not been happening, right? Because they've been at home. So really slow cooking the process. What I mean by that is, we want to look at developing the athlete sort of like making barbecue ribs. We don't cook them on high for 10 minutes. We don't sear that, right? We're going to take a long time, or if we're smoking something, in a smoker, we want to take a long time to really lay a foundation. And I think it's much better to assume that our athletes haven't done as much during the pandemic than they have, because roughly 10% of them will have done a fair amount, and the rest of them just won't have done that. And in Canada, it's not, I don't think it's their fault. I mean, it's been just confusing to know what to do. I mean, parents didn't know what to do, coaches didn't know what to do, kids didn't know what to do. This is something entirely new for everyone, worldwide. And so as a coach, taking it really slow, fundamentals. And I think really not worrying as much about wins and losses and taking the wins in. How much better of a human is my athlete now because I took the time to develop the whole person. And I think that's going to be critical because you got to look at it as if they just didn't do what they normally would do or what the things they needed to do to be prepared for a competitive
out here in
season.
California, I mean, gyms weren't even open. There was no possibility for them, for
Yep.
most of these kids, to get to a facility that had strength training implements and apparatus and anything else. I mean, they couldn't do it. They could do body weight.
Yep. But I mean,
That's all
let's
they
be
could
honest,
do.
that's probably wasn't happening either. And that's the dilemma.
Right.
And I think that it would be naive to, I mean, we joke about the COVID weight gain. Well, there are plenty of adults that had the COVID weight gain. Well, I think that there are plenty of kids that, we're seeing more dysfunction in because they sat more. I mean, they did what adults do. I mean, think about it. When we get over, 20 years old, we start to get in less and less physical shape if we don't play sports still. Why? Because after we graduate from college, generally we get a job and we sit down and we stop moving as much. Well, we just told every kid in America or around the world for that matter, they're going to sit down.
Yes.
And so we've got to stand them back up and we got to get them moving. And that means just very general and much less than you would expect them to be able to handle initially. And, like an infant learns how to hold their head up and then they roll over and they sit and they, then they crawl, then they walk, then they run, processed approach. And we got to take those steps. And I think it's critical for, these sport coaches to be looking at it like that. And I know the friend I referenced, that's a dear friend that's a college baseball coach, is looking at it very much like that. And I write his programming for his strength and conditioning, and we're making sure we've got college kids that can do walking lunges. I mean, literally, they, and I know firsthand that a good percentage of them were real sore after, 20 yards and back of walking lunges.
20 yards and back, walking lunges.
I mean, it sounds so simple, and people have a hard time believing that the answer can be that simple. But it is. I mean, the strength exercise that's most closely related to running is lunging. So if you can body weight lunge for a good distance, you're probably starting to lay the foundational steps to make sure that you're ready to be healthy when you run, sprint, burst, and change directions.
Yeah. And to that end, Ethan, all the other coaches on the site have programming here at Elite Athletes TV. I will put a link down below. You can get to the site. We have ebooks. I have one on passion mechanics. Michelle Granger has a couple on softball. Ethan has full workout programs being built as we speak. And so we'll have them up, full workout blocks to kind of work with kids. You can slow cook them with really high quality training. EB, always a pleasure having you, brother. We're going to, if you guys have topics that you are interested in terms of sports training, sports performance training, human performance training, obviously Ethan's the guy. He's as good as I know at what he does. Solid human being, solid coach. But if you have questions, we'd love to hear them. Leave a comment down below. Always give us that thumbs up, smash the like button, subscribe, hit the bell. You get notified every time we have new stuff coming out. And then, of course, join the email list. So we have an email list at eliteathletestv.com. Get on that email list. We'll be sending you updates. We'll get you stuff out and get you trained up in terms of training when it comes to athletes. EB, I appreciate you coming on here today, brother. We'll get you back on again soon. Enjoy your time down there in Arizona. I know that's starting to get sunny and beautiful down there, right?
It's starting, and it's been great.
That's awesome. Well, great to have you on.
Thanks for having me.
We'll talk to you again soon.
It.
So sometimes old school is the good school. You have to do things to get your mind and body right. If we just specialize, we're going to create problems for young athletes. So make sure you're creating symmetry, creating balance in your body, and improving your overall athleticism. Remember, if you like what I did here today, make sure you subscribe and ring that bell. Get notified when we have new stuff coming out. Give me a thumbs up. Make sure you hit that like button down below. And for being here and being one of the 2%, make sure you hit that like button. And leave me a comment down below. Give us a good question. We'd love to answer it for you here at Elite Athletes TV. Just wanted to talk about some sports performance training, especially for young athletes, and get them started in the right direction. We'll talk to you again soon.